a treat and honor to have all these amazing physicians and leaders, thinkers. So, welcome. And we're going to have a bit of a longer conversation because we got more of us today. I want to start out by starting just sort of going in linear order here. Rachel, how do you see AI affecting the whole field of sort of integrative medicine and whole person health? Because it seems sort of almost antithetical to the principles, which is really around human connection, around the physician or practitioner-patient relationship. And in a way, it almost seems like what we're talking about today is that AI could disintermediate the provider from healthcare. And I'd love to sort of hear your thoughts about the good and the ugly on this.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I have a number of thoughts about this. On the positive side, if we can build AI that actually integrates not just Western medicine and not just data from sets of people that are not representative. I was at a conference this weekend and found out that most of the data used in the health data systems is from Epic, which is a great electronic medical record, but it's for extremely large health systems. Okay, it's not great. None of them are great news, but they don't have any data from federally qualified health centers, and they don't have any data from smaller clinics. So we're missing in our AI a representative population, and then it's all Western medicine. We don't have chiropractic, we don't have acupuncture, we don't have hands-on healing, we don't have anything that we would consider to complete the picture, including intensive lifestyle medicine and nutrition, like we would need to, in my opinion, to be effective. We're ineffective in healthcare. I don't think I need to elaborate on that. So I'm concerned about the inputs to AI, but if we could get them right, my God, doctors all across the country would have access to much more complete ideas about how to do this complexity well. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of promise, not to mention all the biometric data and really tracking of lifestyle. So the exciting part, the concerning part, the biggest concern I have is that doctors are expensive. Not surprisingly, nobody wants to go into primary care. We are all primary care doctors sitting on the stage, all of us, all four of us right now. And we went into it because we were passionate about that connection with the person. And that connection is not a small thing. Yeah. So if I give Mark, this flower, and I say, Mark, there's ancient wisdom that shows that if I give you this orchid, that chest pain you're having is going to get better. And Mark trusts me and knows I care about him. 30 to 40% chance he's going to get better.
But
if
he gave me a brownie and told me I was going to feel better. I'd feel better if Rachel gave me a brownie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what kind of brownie is really the question mark. But that human connection activates the process of healing inside the human being. So we're talking about a shortage of primary care, a lack of funding for it, and it's a lot cheaper to bet out a big amount of money for an AI system that's going to do great diagnostics. I mean, excellent. I'm excited about that. But we're going to have fewer doctors, more mid-levels, and the conversations are not even about nurse practitioners and physician assistants, who are fantastic. It's about medical assistants who don't really have much clinical training at all, plus AI to do healthcare. That will be a serious loss. And I think healthcare is already unfriendly, and I think that will make it much more so.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're so right about the need to integrate, a bigger data set into the sort of model that actually informs the outputs. But what I've been shocked about is you can literally ask ChatGPT or any of these models, here's my condition, provide me a functional or integrative medicine approach and what would be the diagnostics and treatments, and it's pretty damn good, which is kind of shocking. So it's getting it from somewhere. I don't know where it's getting from, but it's pretty amazing. Scarlett, I think a lot of your work focuses on health equity, and I think one of the biggest challenges in our society today is the scope of the health disparities across so many sectors of society in terms of wealth disparities, racial disparities, and it's something we really do a crappy job of in healthcare. And there's large swaths of population that are just completely neglected. I was just with a football player who was sort of from New Orleans, who won the Super Bowl, Leonard Fortenay, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. It's kind of a French last name. And he wants to gift function to 3,000 people in his underserved community in New Orleans who don't have access. And my question is really, how do you see technology and AI helping to address this problem? Because these are underserved communities. They don't have enough providers. They don't have enough access to knowledge and education, and there's these big gaps. So how do you see sort of where we are with medicine and this sort of the health disparities and the role of technology and AI in helping to solve some of those?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question and a complex question. And I think that there are multiple possible ways through which to engage it. So maybe I'll speak a little bit to some of the concrete examples that we're using right now at Duke Health and Wellbeing as we endeavor to expand our mandate to help the health system advance health equity. So let me start sort of at a larger level with just technology in general. And so one of the things that we're doing to engage this gap, this enormous disparity, and the fact that we're within a context in which a lot of the modalities that are well-being modalities are not insurance covered. And so not only is there a dearth of providers, sometimes sort of parallel realities in which people are living in terms of well-being and healthcare deserts, but really the multiple aspects of well-being, not just the healthcare facilities, but access to healthy nutrition, access to safe places to move the body, and opportunities for meaningful social connection, the kinds of things that contribute to this larger concept of well-being. So taking all of those things into account, one practical approach to give you a sense from a technology before we get into the AI piece is we are partnering with an organization, Healthios Collaborative. They have a project called Take Care, and I encourage everybody here to check it out. It's completely free to the public, and you can just go to takecare.org. And they have worked with award-winning filmmakers. So using technology, they have a whole cadre of health advisors and scientific advisors, all evidence-based. And they have created 3 to 8 minute long inspirational films that are using best available evidence to show a person that could be any one of us across race, gender, socioeconomics, engaging their well-being in some way. So a real person, they call them heroes, and you see their journey, learning, for example, a family that survived the one of the California fires, the little girl learning breath work as a way to be able to handle the trauma, or a guard that works at Rikers Island, using meditation as a way to kind of engage with his own autonomic nervous system. And so we are partnering as a health system with them, and they've taken they've taken the technology, which is, to your point, sort of bringing the skill sets without having to go to a clinic to get them, and then but also pairing the peer-to-peer group model, behavior change model that was developed at the VA's Whole Health program that has a good amount of evidence around some healthcare outcomes of significance, both to people and to health systems, and bringing both together, and then training community organizations that are well established within the community to be able to deliver within their existing models of care this kind of combination of the human to human, this incredible therapeutic piece that Rachel just spoke about, with the addition of the technology that supports an enhancement of the skill set. And so I see that as a really beautiful weaving together of human connection, that, this 9-week peer-to-peer, peers teaching peers and peers supporting peers around well-being with technology woven into it in a manner that supports skill development. Where I see AI, and I'll just wrap up, we can come back to this just to give more time for others, but where I see AI would be along the same lines, is to what extent can we use AI to facilitate communities taking charge of their own health, their own well-being, and wisely utilizing information in a more sort of democratized, decentralized way. The final thing I'll say around this is to Rachel's point, we need the voices of everyone, of folks that are that have traditional wisdom, that have indigenous knowledge, alongside our best available medical evidence. And also we need conversations, and there are conversations around how to enhance the way that we create evidence and the sort of mixed methods research models that would allow us to bring qualitative and quantitative information so that we give a broader representation of what is really happening, and we can best support people to truly live their health and to own their health.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it just seems like it could really be a helpful tool using technology to really break some of this sort of endless cycle of disease and sort of the disparities that we see in so many of the populations in America. So I think that's great. Sara.
Mark.
I've known Sara for a long time. In the framework of functional medicine, how do you see AI adding value? Because I think, one, there's a big lack of providers. There's a big demand. And I'm sure you and I get it all the time, like, who do I see? Where do I go? How do I get help? I mean, you've written many books about how to take care of yourself, as I have, and it helps a lot of people, but it's still not enough. And secondly, in terms of the complexity of functional medicine, it's a monster to really understand human biology. It's not easy. And I find myself constantly, trying to learn more, and I just feel like I'm a beginner. And how do you see the AI technology serving us in sort of expanding this model to help more people with the suffering that they don't need to have, because we have the solutions?
We do have the solutions, and I think the trick is how do you personalize? How do you take that really complex data flow and personalize it for the patient that's in front of you? Because as our friend Jeff Bland says so beautifully, he talks about how the randomized trial and the other ways of collecting evidence about treatment is based on medicine for the average. Medicine for the average is not working. And it's what draws so many people to functional medicine, integrative medicine, to really learn, okay, if you've got a person sitting in front of you who's got a unique genetic blueprint, whose genes are being expressed in a particular way, who's got epigenetic influences, environmental influences, how do you really collaborate with them and come up with treatment plans that are going to be effective? So I think AI is going to help us with those complex data sets that you just evoked as you were talking about how the science changes along with all these data sets that you collect on your patients. So I've got that experience too. I think we all have that experience of, I've got patients who've got Oura rings. I've got patients who've got a Garmin watch. I've got people who send me their 8 sleep data from each morning. And 8 Sleep is using AI to optimize your sleep. I think that's actually a good example of how we can democratize data, as well as make the role of a clinician in some ways easier. Like, I don't think AI is going to, you were talking about how you can type into ChatGPT, a chronic condition, show me the functional medicine approach to prediabetes, and you can get some pretty good information. But ChatGPT also makes mistakes.
Yeah, it's not quite there.
Right? It's not quite there. So it's giving these text approximations of the information that we need. And so then we need experts, clinicians, physicians, nurse practitioners, chiropractors, acupuncturists, to be able to review the data to see if it's the right message. The other opportunity that I get excited about, and Scarlett, I love how you spoke into this so beautifully. I feel like when I went through medical school 30 years ago, I learned about the gap that women experience. There's this massive women's health gap. There's a knowledge gap, a treatment gap, decades of research done in men and assumed to apply to women, and it often doesn't. So I get excited about AI.
I mean, men and women are different.
In so many ways, And that's where AI can help us.
Yeah.
You know, I see so many women who are in perimenopause and menopause, and they go to their clinicians and they're like, oh my God, hot flashes and mood swings and can't sleep. And they get told, you know, there, you're just getting older. That is the wrong message. And I feel like AI can really help us by integrating all of the latest science that we have and putting it at the fingertips of the clinician. That's what I get excited about.
Yeah, I think, before we go on, I want to ask, is anybody confused about what the difference is between integrative medicine and functional medicine? Anybody?
You should be.
I mean, if all of you aren't who didn't raise your hand, that's impressive. But maybe we could just sort of like talk about that for a sec.
And whole health.
And whole health.
Throw
Like,
'em all in.
so, Rachel, why don't you just sort of touch on your understanding of sort of where we're at in medicine? Because
Yeah.
we're talking about new paradigms, new ways of thinking about health and disease, new ways of organizing healthcare, new ways of treating patients. And I think there's a lot of, confusion about what's what out there. And I think I'd love to hear your perspective and each of your perspectives on this, because we're all in that field. We've all sort of come out of that kind of incubator, and we have different takes on it. I think it'd be an interesting conversation. Would that be interesting for you? Yeah. Okay.
Great. So,
And it's going to tie back to AI. Don't worry, I got it.
and then there's a couple of elements here, right? Who's included in it? And then what practices does this particular thing do? So I think of Western medicine as a body that is incomplete. It's got an arm, but it's missing 2 legs, and it's missing its head. It's not a whole health system. A whole health system includes nutrition, exercise, spirituality, like Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine from India, a sexual tradition. It's a whole system of health. Western medicine, which I love, I'm a nerd, I love it, don't get me wrong, but it's incomplete, and it's partly why we're failing. So the attempt of what was alternative medicine, holistic medicine, complementary medicine, we didn't even mention those are kind of the older names, which then graduated to integrative medicine, is how do we bring in those other elements? How do we think about hands-on therapy? How do we also incorporate other kinds of practitioners? Chiropractors, naturopathic doctors, acupuncturists, massage therapists, osteopaths, all kinds of other practitioners, and traditional medicine practitioners from traditional cultures. Integrative medicine was the idea that we don't leave Western medicine behind. We absolutely use it, but we include all these other practitioners. Functional medicine really came out of the same root and is a way of doing medicine, in my understanding, that's really looking at the cellular level of function, examining, and it's been incredibly helpful in GI, for example, in the microbiome. In my opinion, that all came out of functional
100%,
medicine.
Yeah.
And cellular energy. And, it's really using Western science applied in a more in-depth way to get at root cause of disease.
Yeah.
And then whole health is a completely different animal, because it's a systems-based approach to delivering what we're talking about in a medical system. So it exists currently at the Veterans Administration. It was so successful there, and it includes chiropractic and acupuncture and group therapy and trauma treatment alongside medical treatment, that it saved an extraordinary amount of money for the Veterans Administration, happier patients, happier providers, less providers leaving, and they're doing better financially. So much so that it's now spreading across the entire VA, across the entire United States. The National Academy of Medicine just published 2 important papers a year ago, another one more recently, about how we could apply that model to our current failing healthcare system to be more effective. So a lot of different words. Whole health is a system thing. Integrative medicine, functional medicine really represent other ways of thinking about making a health system whole in the way I think.
That was good, Rachel. That was good.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Scarlett, how would you think about it?
Well, I think that was fantastic. And I wouldn't add much more than to say what we have right now is a crucial moment, an opportunity. So I don't think I need to elaborate on the definitions, but I want to go back to the whole health piece and to the National Academy of Medicine report. And I would encourage everybody to go look at it. It's called Achieving Whole Health for the Nation, put together by the National Academy of Medicine, I think last February, the original report. And it was the result of a 4-year study of this whole health approach with the VA's whole health program as a kind of central sort of fulcrum of the analysis, but also other systems around the country and internationally that took this more whole person and community approach. And their findings in terms of key outcomes of interest for us, in terms of the burden of chronic disease, cost savings, cost reductions, in terms of the ability to promote health, the ability for health to be a participatory experience, for communities to own their health, for it to be not just a clinical experience, but really about a healthy society, and was such that they, in the paper, in the National Academy of Medicine is the body that advises Congress on matters of medicine, made a recommendation that the country needs to adopt this as the healthcare of the nation. And so there have been many conversations that are happening about what would this entail. And they go in the report to detail specific steps and the role of health and the Department of Health and Human Services, and the need to create a specific body that would sort of on the level of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, that level, and establish a roadmap for how that can happen. So I just want to really focus on that piece, because that expands outside of, I'm sorry, my microphone is a little bit squeaky. I don't know if others are hearing it, but it expands outside of a particular stream of medicine to an approach that is about participation, equity, embedded right into their definition of whole health, health promoting, entwined with public health. So it really engages the equity piece, the health promotion piece, the creation of a healthy society, and then gives room for systems and communities. I'm so sorry about this.
No, we can hear it. We don't hear it.
You don't hear it?
We
Oh,
don't hear it.
great. Fantastic. For systems and societies and communities to be able to determine what the ingredients are. So a community or an environment may be more functional medicine predominant, whereas maybe Native Alaskan, which was one of the examples that they use in their report, community has more culturally contextualized, tribal medicine aspects to it, woven into it. So there is this opportunity for contextualization within this larger framework of these 5 principles that they outlined that would create a whole health system and that could deliver significant improvements on our health for the nation and lower costs. So
Yeah. Thank you.
took us down the side, but I think adding that
I think it's
dimension
important. I
was
think that the
helpful.
framework of how do we rethink healthcare delivery, and how do we sort of create a bigger tent for all the things that actually work, or that we know work better than what we're doing. It's really important. Sara, how would you sort of think about defining this difference between functional and integrative and whole systems medicine?
Yeah, I love the definitions that we've already shared. I feel like I'm in the only department of integrative medicine that we have in the world. And so to see how academic centers have been so slow to adopt these ways that are outside of the conventional approach to medicine has been really sad for me. Like right? I mean, you were at Cleveland Clinic and you started functional medicine there. That's super exciting. There's the University of Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine, but that's about it. I mean, there's a few centers around the country, but in terms of a department that's on par with the Department of Medicine, Department of Surgery, there's one. So that's super exciting, but the way that we position it at Thomas Jefferson University is that we're adding value to conventional medicine.
Yeah.
And that I think is important. It's important from a marketing perspective because it steps on the toes less of the conventional medicine power. And that power is important to talk about. Like, it's at the root of the racial divide. It's at the root of the gender health divide. And I think that, you know, for folks who go through conventional medical training, there's a way that you sort of don't look out very broadly at other possibilities. Like, I was taught, for instance, that the best way to approach prediabetes and diabetes is lifestyle medicine. Was I taught how to do that? No, not at all. I think you and we all got about the same amount of nutrition in medical school.
About a half an hour.
Yeah, 30 minutes. So I feel like I want to see academic centers take this on more, and I think the whole health movement with the VAs and with the trend that we're seeing is very exciting. But I also think that I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah.
Like, we need it, and it comes out of so many people being failed by the conventional medical system.
Yeah.
And our approach to chronic disease is not working. It works for a broken bone or for pneumonia, but not for chronic disease.
No. So I'm going to ask myself, well, Mark, what's your perspective on functional integrated medicine? Oh, thanks for asking.
Mark, what is your perspective?
I think y'all did an incredible job. But you know, I think what happened is that with the Flexner report, which was commissioned by Rockefeller's doctor in the early 1900s, it sort of marginalized all therapies that were not, quote, scientific. So whether it's chiropractors or osteopaths or all these other modalities were just sort of kicked to the curb. And I think the great contribution of Andrew Weil to this field was to say, hey, you know, he was like a hippie doctor at the end of the road in Arizona, and people would hear about him and go, how do I do this? And say, use these herbs, or here, try this osteopath, or acupuncture might be helpful. And I think that was an incredible thing to bring these modalities back into healthcare. And it wasn't really that threatening because it kind of included them, but didn't disrupt the traditional healthcare model. And it added value, and it added modalities that I think were important. And I think I personally benefited immensely from these therapies, whether it's, you know, acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and so forth. And I think they need to be included in the whole person model of health. And they've shown to be incredibly effective as part of the VA, and the data's there. I think functional medicine is a little bit different because it's sort of more has sort of seen the smoke signals that were coming in the science. And Jeffrey Bland, who sort of created this field among a few other practitioners, is like an encyclopedia, and he's got this sort of Hoover brain that sucks in data from all these disparate fields of science and medicine and sees the patterns in the data. He's like a one-person AI, I think. And what he then has done is sort of help us clinicians understand how we can try to do things like work on the microbiome and the gut and deal with inflammation and deal with insulin resistance and treat the mitochondria and do all these things and deal with toxins and things that were sort of, that are scientific. It's not like Chinese medicine in the sense that, although there's plenty of science on that, it's more around rethinking the entire paradigm of medicine. And that's very threatening because it threatens the very sort of foundational structure of how we diagnose and treat disease. And And what's really exciting having Eric on stage was, the academics are now discovering exactly that this is true. And so we didn't really get into it too much, but when you look at the hallmarks of aging, we talked about the nutrient sensing pathways. It's all about how food affects all these important pathways that regulate our health and longevity and epigenetics. When you look at the mitochondria, and the mitochondrial dysfunction is one of the hallmarks of aging. It's central to functional medicine. When you look at inflammation, when you look at the microbiome, these are all part of the hallmarks of aging, and they're things that kind of overlap almost like perfectly over the model. And so the way I think about functional medicine is sort of a meta framework for thinking about health and disease based on the body as a network, as a system, as an ecosystem, and understanding the root causes and how do we restore health. It's really more the science of creating health as opposed to the science of treating disease. Mm-hmm. And it's asking more why rather than what, not what disease do I have and what drug do I get, but why is this happening and how do I restore optimal function? And so that's really what Eric's talking about, is that we have, all of us, the capacity to activate these healing systems in our body that can help us live to 95, 100 years old, everybody in this room, if we know. And I think that's really where functional medicine has taken us. But it's frustrating to me because from the very start I realized it's extremely difficult to learn. It's extremely complex. There's so much going on in the body every second, and everything is affecting everything all the time. And it's overwhelming to kind of think about. And the data sets can get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's hard to process them as an individual practitioner. So I think the value of AI is actually helping us to start to sort through and understand these data sets. Like Eric was saying, we have 100,000 blood tests, but with AI we can start to sort them and make sense of actually how they could apply to you and what's relevant and what it means and what to do about it. So that's what I think is super exciting. And I think, I think mostly functional medicine, I think, been misunderstood as being more about testing or supplements or not scientific, but in fact, it's kind of very, very scientific. It's just it hasn't really kind of had a good home. Even at Cleveland Clinic, it's still sort of a little bit of a nice project, but it's not really driving change to the center. So I think we're in this moment where the intersection of AI and systems medicine. He's talking about Leroy Hood. I mean, Leroy Hood is the father of systems biology and medicine. That's what functional medicine is. Mm-hmm. There's textbooks out of Harvard now on network medicine by Lakazi and Barbasi, which describe, that we need to completely rethink our approach to diagnosis and treatment based on multiple causes and multiple treatments that deal with multiple dysfunctions. And I think that's kind of where I feel like the promise of AI is. So I think I want to. That was my little speech. Sorry, I had to do that. I hope you didn't mind. I want to, kind of dive deeper a little bit with each of you on what you're most excited about in the sort of this field, mm-hmm. and what you're most concerned about, and how what are the sort of the best of times, worst of times for where we're headed in terms of sort of our field of medicine and AI.
So, how many of you were here yesterday when Danielle and Cecily were in conversation up on the stage? Not so many of you. It's worth watching. It's a short talk. Danielle goes into detail about how she lives in Hawaii. She was working with a local Hawaiian population and introducing technology. That's her expertise. And they introduced Hawaiian values, concepts into ChatGPT. So they gave ChatGPT a whole bunch of inputs in a stronger way that it didn't contain. And then they asked a question, what if somebody steals your fruit off your tree in your yard? And the answer that they got from several AI systems were things like call the police, et cetera, et cetera. The answer they got from the one that had the Hawaiian values in it was, remember aloha. Think about your neighbor. Imagine what being in a community means. Have a conversation, okay? I give this as an example, a real example of what might be possible if we have an input into AI that includes the whole person, our human values, mm-hmm. the value of human connection, what we deeply know about eating, moving, sleeping, having a sense of purpose and spirituality in terms of its impact on health, massive. What was it they said in that last talk? 91%, something like that. What if we put that into our AI? To me, that's a health revolution. And I want all the functional health stuff. I want all the good techie stuff. I want all the biometric data. I want that too. But if we can get those fundamental principles first, then the output we get is going to be truly useful.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, Rachel, is the distinguishing between knowledge-based AI and data-driven AI. And I think people don't, I think, understand, like, data-driven AI is like how you drive a car. You can get the self-driving car, and it's just based on data. Knowledge-based AI means you have to have some human input to sort of govern it, like you're saying. Like, if you asked AI to, how we'd end chronic disease, it says kill everybody over 10 years old. It would work, but probably not a good idea, right? And so if we start to inform it with these kinds of values and knowledge and input, it starts to sort of change the output.
Yeah. And I mean, we are suffering from lack of connection in our society. We talked about that on stage yesterday. I'm concerned about AI making that worse in healthcare, and I think healthcare is already bleeding from a lack of human connection. And doctors all on their computers, while barely looking at their patients.
Yeah.
So I am hopeful in an invitation for all of us to get engaged way. And so I think that, that was perfectly said, Rachel, that the output is going to relate to the input, and that we cannot take for granted that the right input is going in, especially given the fragmentation and disconnection and body-centric perspective that has infused a lot of our healthcare history. So I think we need to, we have this exquisite computational capacity that we must respect and guard with great care, especially because, to your point, Mark, around you were speaking about when we change paradigms, right, and how the part of functional medicine and integrative health and all of this is it's providing new ways of thinking about health. With AI, we are building a new future in terms of conceptual frameworks then into which we live. And so there's this process of birthing them, of developing them, that allows us an opportunity to create guardrails, ethical guardrails, content guardrails, participation guardrails that help us to think about what are we making? Because soon after, it is possible, not necessary, but it can happen, that we accept them so deeply, they get infused into our social existence so deeply that we forget and we just use them. But this is the moment for us to really guard what's going into our AI and into the large language models, into whatever frame we're using to then draw from for guidance as we navigate our lives. I can't sort of underscore that enough. We need to ask these questions, and we need to really ask, and I love some of the conversations that happened yesterday around transparency. Where is the data coming from? What is normal in a particular model? What is it that we are using as a standard? To your point also around gaps and women, and so we want as much wisdom. And I'm going to be very radical, and I'm going to say, in the highest version of this word, we need to infuse love into our AI. Love as unconditional regard, as an approach to the whole person, that we tend to the spirit, that we tend to the relations, that we tend to none of us is a physical being alone. We are multidimensional, social, emotional, spiritual, and physical beings. Our AI needs to be representative of that if it's going to be a guide for us down the road. And I really want to encourage us to think about, there's a process, and you can think about anything that is just part of the way things are, from cars to whatever. There's a process in which something just settles into the background and we exist in it. As we go into that process, we want to make sure that what we've created is really going to support flourishing in the highest aspects of our humanity. That would be what I would say. And that's what I'm excited about, and it takes all of us. And so really expanding this conversation.
So AI.love, is that it?
Yes.
Scarlett, that was so beautiful. And Rachel, I love your story about the fruit off the tree. It's Scarlett, you're reminding me of that analogy of frogs in a big pot of water that's slowly brought to a boil, and you don't even know that the temperature is changing. Like, I think we need that kind of care and vigilance when it comes to AI. It's got this, it can be such a exponential force of change and promotion of health and cutting across these gaps that we've been talking about today. But it also can be used nefariously. And so much of it depends on, as you have both described, how these systems get trained. And so being really mindful, being part of the solution with training AI with the kind of change we want to see in the world, the kind of change we want to see in people's health, that's what I'm hoping for.
So beautiful. I think it is one of those sort of auspicious moments where there's dark and light, and you can hear this battle going on. And on last night at dinner, I was talking with Jack Kornfield about a dinner he was at with Yuval Harari and the CEO of NVIDIA, and it was like, it's all great, and no, it's not. And I think that the speed of change is just happening so fast. It's not happening at human speed. I think, I don't know who said it, but where we have Paleolithic brains and medieval institutions and godlike technology, and that can make for a pretty messed up set of things that happens. And he said, when change starts to happen really fast, humans kind of aren't used to that. And when you think of the speed of change throughout human evolution history, it's been really slow. Like when you look at, from 5,000 years ago to 2,000 to 1,000, it's just in the last 100 years that we've seen this really acceleration of technology and industrial revolution and the technology revolution and the AI revolution. It's both holds sort of this promise of incredible value for humanity and for healing and medicine, particularly I think in medicine, but it also, people are really uncertain of how to deal with it or think about it. And we've seen some of the harms it's done with social media and the algorithms and how it takes over and causes division and hatred and conflict and suffering and loneliness and depression and pain. But, there's also this incredible moment where I think it could be used to really bring so much healing and value to the world. So hopefully we can navigate this with love, with kindness, and with wisdom. But I don't know, humans, I don't know if they're doing so good these days on all that, but hopefully we'll get there. Any final thoughts from any of you?
I'm just excited for all of you to have access to a healing system that actually cares about you and your community and where you live and what's available to you, regardless of where that is.
Thank you.
Spread the love.
I think we finished with love. I think that's the way to end it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.